All right, now that Bob West is here, we can go ahead and get started. Bob West is someone that I deeply admire and have worked with for a number of years. And we pick on each other in public and privately. But I promised that wouldn't start until he showed up. So he's back. You having a good lunch there, Bob? All right. I am a very old guy. I have a hearing disability. I wear hearing aids. So I would appreciate it if you would all come down front. This is not a religious service. Just come on down front. It makes it a lot easier on me. I'm asking you politely. And the other reason I want to see you move is because we got the very special right after lunch a little bit of exercise program to start with. It makes it much easier for everybody to pay attention, and then there's no snoring in the background, which kind of throws things off. Those of you who use iPhones, be sure and upgrade them. There's a new security update. You always have to have an announcement at a security conference to update your iPhone. And this is real. This is not just a public announcement. This is actual reality. The other thing I want to share with you, and I don't want you to view this as an advertisement, but if you do view it as an advertisement and want to join, that's fine. But this is not an advertisement. One of my many jobs is to serve as the General Counsel of ISSA. I'm mentioning that in passing. I'm not doing that as a recruiting effort. But if you want to join, I encourage you to do that. We've got a very distinguished panel today, and I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves because that shows the credibility of this particular group. And I like to do this as a seminar, and what I mean by seminar is don't wait until the end for questions. If you've got questions while we're making presentations, raise your hand. I'm still mobile. I'll walk around and hand you the microphone because I want this to be a learning experience for all of us. The other point I want to make is this is non-rehearsed. Did we talk about what we're going to talk about today?
Not at all.
All right. When you have a security crisis, it's a come-as-you-are party. You don't have an opportunity to prepare for it. You have to go with what shows up. You don't always know who is there. What do you do? Are you a CISO? Are you a CISO? What? You're a what? You have been drafted to be on the panel. I'm serious. Because when a crisis hits, you never know who's available. You have been, no, I'm serious. Come on up, sit down. Mic her up, please. All right, while she's getting mic'd up, please.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Richard Rushing, and I'm CISO for Motorola Mobility, have responsibility for Lenovo, our parent company as well. I've been CISO longer than we have people that are at this conference, over 16 years, which is a really long time, and I've been in the cybersecurity industry pretty much all my life.
Good afternoon. On your agenda, I'm TBD. My name is Bruce Phillips, Senior Vice President, Chief Information Security Officer for the Williston Financial Group of companies. I'm on my second role as a CISO. I've been doing building and running programs in the title insurance and real estate settlement services realm for the last 15 years. Like we just said, no one knows who's going to be on the panel. I was drafted at about 10 o'clock this morning.
Hi, I am Zayira Jordan, Dr. Zayira Jordan. I teach cybersecurity. I have a PhD in human-computer interaction. And about this session, I was attracted to the term flood because I am Puerto Rican, and we've had to deal with many natural disasters in the last few years, and I wanted to be able to understand how to best advise Puerto Ricans who deal with hurricanes and stuff like that, natural disasters, on how to best prepare cybersecurity-wise.
Okay, now you're going to play two roles today. In addition to being a new technical expert that we just drafted, you're also going to be the CEO. Because frequently CEOs don't have a foxtrot clue whenever there's a crisis.
So does that mean I don't have a clue?
Oh, this is going to be interesting. Get some more popcorn and move on up, because we're going to have something going on here.
When I was the Director of Global Cybersecurity Management at the Department of Homeland Security a few years ago, and for those of you who are familiar with Washington, the longer the title you have, the less responsibility you have. You know, president is just one word. But my executive assistant was from Puerto Rico, and she always spoke fast. So I'm going to ask you to speak slowly as I ask her to speak slowly, because I am from the South. I speak fluent Southernese. I hear fluent Southernese. And when people speak very quickly, I can't understand them. So the agreement I had with her was, you can speak as fast as you want to, but if you want me to understand what you're saying, slow down, because I hear slowly. Like this?
Yes.
That sounds, okay, I'll try to do better. I can learn, oddly enough. All right, most of my background has been associated with legal stuff. Right in there. Right in there, okay, doing better. Most of my background is associated with legal stuff. I'm an attorney. I have a character flaw as attorney. I'm honest. I am accustomed to dealing with complex problems, and I enjoy that. My biggest technical background is associated with being a hacker. Not too many lawyers can say that they were a hacker. I'm willing to do that now because the statute of limitations has run. But I dealt with clients who were hackers and were very good at it, and I was passing legal judgment on what they were doing, and I just wanted to make sure that I knew better what they, sometimes clients lie to you. I know that's shocking. So my point that I'm making now is, whenever there is a crisis with a cybersecurity incident, the first person you want to talk to is who?
The lawyers.
The system administrator?
I like his answer better than hers, but
Oh, the lawyers?
sure, I'm in favor of the Lawyer Full Employment Act.
We got 3 votes for the lawyer. I need coverage, otherwise I'm going to be on that.
No, seriously. Who do you call first when you run into this zero-day event?
Oh, anything that comes in, it's where it comes into. Usually there is an incident response team that's already stood up, already planned, that comes into action, that's there. It's like spinning up something. You already planned for it, so you already know,
Right.
Here's the 3 people, 4 people that are part of this. Let's go. It's time to go. It depends. Now, if we're talking, we're coming into the incident. It's not an event. It has already went from an event to an incident that's there. So it already went from, we suspect something of being a problem, to this is a problem.
Right. Yeah, so from the incident standpoint, first person that gets called is me. They present the case. As soon as I say, we've declared an incident, my first call is to the incident response manager that I have. My second call is to general counsel. My third call is to my chief compliance officer. And there's a reason why I do that. It's exactly what it says in my plan. That's exactly what we've tested to, and every time we do the scenario, we walk through that so everyone knows. And then there's things that happen behind the scene of spinning up the war room and getting the other people that we need involved. But the first call that I make is the incident manager, followed by general counsel, followed by chief compliance, because the 3 of us have specific roles that now have just kicked in to play. And we follow that and we train that.
Wait a second, but that's in a big organization. What about a small organization? How
You see
do
the
we
value
go-
add of having her on the panel? You draft technical expertise when you need it. Go ahead, please.
No, I'm just asking,
No,
what
no.
do we do in a small organization
Well,
where we don't have all these resources? Because there's a lot of
So
that out there.
these are roles.
Tag, you're it.
Yeah, these are roles. You may have one person doing more than one role. So one of the things that I do, as well as running the cybersecurity program for the Williston Financial Group, I actually advise and run some programs for independent title and escrow agents that use that underwrite or that buy our product. We have that discussion. There may be 10 people in the entire organization. And so then I look at the owner and I says, okay, those 3 roles that I just said, that's you. So the thing is, though, is you need to understand your limitations and what you should be doing, create the plan, and follow the plan. Understanding that the first time
Practice the
you
plan.
get punched in the face, your plan goes away, but at least you have some muscle memory to follow through.
You might not even have those resources internally. You might have to go outside and get people to come in and help you. And many times, a small organization, I've got IT people. Do you have security people? We got one guy that does the firewall rules. Okay, do you have anybody that can do forensics? What's that? And how's that spelled, please? No. So you really have to be able to go get outside people that's there. And don't think of it as being, every time a breach happens, there is someone that went outside and got people for help. Big organizations do it all the time. There's no shame in going and asking for help from people. Everyone does it.
One of the words I heard repeatedly from both of you gentlemen is plan.
Yes.
So you always have a set plan and you follow that, right?
Until you're punched in the face and it changes.
And then you roll with the punch and figure out what happened next.
How often do you practice that plan? Only in an emergency?
No.
Usually quarterly, kind of. Nowadays, it's usually quarterly. Before, it used to be semi-annually, so every 6 months you would go through the exercise. Because the issue before, and I give you this thing, simple things like, here are the 10 people on the list. In organizations, okay, after a year, maybe 4 of those 10 people are no longer there. So your plan is already out of date. So the more you practice, actually the more update your plan is on that side of it that's there, without having to go through a whole exercise to update the plan. You know what? You go through and you make the changes. It's simple stuff.
And it's more than just having the plan. If you have a plan but you've never trained the people that you are anticipating to be part of the plan, well, then you're in problems. So what we do is we have a plan, but I also have a live document of the people that sit in different roles, and then we train those people as to what their role is as part of the plan. And so while we test it twice a year, we train on it and then give a little bit of, different ways. I just like my training and awareness for my security people. There's a little drip things that I send out once in a while. Did you remember? Or, what do we do? Or here's been a change. But it's got to be living. It's got to be something that it's not something you do for the first time in the middle of a firefight, because that's when everything will go wrong fast.
No, I totally agree with you, but I'm going to suggest that this plan needs to be exercised more frequently than you do. And I'm only saying that just based on my personal experience. And here's a rationale for that. There are so many dynamic events that occur now that are increasingly occurring, and we are not always prepared for that particular event because it's so novel. The second point I would make associated with that is we are constantly changing personnel. Mm-hmm. They're not always available.
Or where they're supposed to be.
Say again?
Where they're supposed to be. Again, world of COVID, everybody moved around. So if you're supposed to be in Chicago and now you're in Davenport, Iowa, and it's a 3-hour drive, that may actually affect your ability to follow up with the plan when you're supposed to go into the data center and unplug the device.
Precisely, and Kate made that point earlier today in her presentation, where she had to leave her father's home to go to a hotel to get connectivity, and that I like that, because that proves my point, or supports my
and so
particular
one of the things that I'll counter on how many times you train, we are having to institute the incident response plan so many times. It's not like this is a document that sits on the shelf that we don't use until we train. And one of the things that is challenging for me and my staff is to remind them to follow the plan. Don't just react, follow the plan. So we take every opportunity as an opportunity to train, even though we're in the middle of a firefight. And what we found is we don't miss things now. And that ensures that for everything that we work on, we understand the root cause analysis and the lessons learned and what's the next thing to do. And so it's driving to be systemic. It's what you do when somebody says there's a problem, you should break out the plan and work through it.
I think we should ask one of our esteemed panelists here, who is in the education, what does the human mind need before it starts forgetting things? How often does it there? Because I can tell you from classes and everything else that I've taken over the years, there will be some that, yes, you will remember continuously forever, and others, they're gone the second the door closes on the last day of class.
Yeah, that's not my field of expertise, cognitive science or anything like that.
If you can't make it, fake it.
No,
I mean, this is a crisis mode. It's a come and you are party.
The thing is that I think that practicing makes not only perfection, but also for you to be able to have that sink in. The plan, you know, the cross seal folder that you have somewhere in, it has to be something alive. That's what I tell my students. I teach contingency planning. So one another question that I had for you is how do you differentiate an event from an incident? How does that categorization, how does that kick in?
It's in my plan. We actually have a process that we have developed that anytime someone says, I think there's a problem, we go through this process. And at some point, there's some key triggers. Some things that occur will automatically be escalated to an incident, so they call me and we start. Some things take a little bit of triage to be able to understand, and in the plan we've documented those triage steps and what it takes to, you know, wake up everybody in the middle of the night and get started. So it's not, there's not an answer of here's the thing. There are multiple things that will actually institute us breaking out the incident response plan.
There's lots of triggers. Most of it all kind of mostly revolves around risk.
Yes.
But that risk could be human life, could be intellectual property, could be damage to brand, could be a lot of different things that's there, but a lot of it's revolving around risk and what's your risk acceptance, tolerance, whatever you want to say. Is this good or bad? Because again, it could be simply like, you know, we cut this cable and we just cut off our third party, anything else. What does that mean? Well, we no longer have call centers. So those are those measures, but those are usually driven in the incident response of that, because those are your responses. You've actually went to that place, because you go to the place at first where you determine that it's an issue. Now what do you do about it?
Right.
What you do about it is the really hard part, or the really simple things.
So how do you account for things that you never expected, like a new sort of exploit or? So,
and it's in my, it's in my plan. That's, you know, and I'm gonna beat that up. If you are unsure it's an incident, it is an incident. Period. You know, I don't want to have, you know, a SOC guy deciding it's not an incident when it is, or being unsure. So it's right in the plan that if you are unsure,
at that point.
yeah, exactly. If you are unsure, it's an incident. We fall to that level. And for us, that works. And for me personally, I think that's the best way to do it.
In your earlier comments, and I don't want to take it out of context, I want to just make sure I understood it clearly. You used the phrase several times, follow the plan, follow the plan. How flexible is that guidance, follow the plan?
As soon as you get punched, then do what you need to do. The plan is a guideline, right? The plan is how I can train you how to respond to something you've probably never seen before. But as soon as you get something that you don't know, you're not going to work in a vacuum. That's the number one thing that I tell everyone. You're not alone, right? That's why I have a team that's defined. I want you to get to the team. I want to get groupthink going. I want everyone that we need, and I don't care who I have to wake up to the chairman of the board. If we have to wake him up to ask a question, that's okay. So the plan is not, it's not tablets coming down from a mountain. It's a guideline. And there's enough flexibility that you can do things. And we also say, whenever you're in doubt, it's the worst incident you've ever seen, wake everybody up.
Yeah.
I think we have a question.
We have questions in the audience.
Oh, yeah. All right. You want to see me walk, I know.
So while Richard's walking, totally agree with you, but it's according to the plan and how it's written, because you can have what I refer to as mission-based plans with objectives, and those can never be deviated from. You can have framework plans which don't have any rules to it and everybody goes off. The nice middle ground is really where you want to be between those two extremes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I got a question for you. It's almost a 180 of what you just said. It happened in my organization earlier this year. We had a SOC guy see an incident come up, and he didn't think it was a problem. It fell through the cracks. 12, 24, 48 hours later, we realized, oh shit, this is a problem. It's bad. He shouldn't have done it. How do you implement your plan, and what do you do at that moment where it's hitting the point of time where curtailing it may not be a possibility? What do you do at that point, and how do you attack it?
Well, without knowing details, things are going to happen. People are going to make bad mistakes. So the first thing you need to do is, the mistake is not the mistake. I don't care about the mistake when I find out. We then start working the plan. And we go through the process. What that means then is coming back. That is one of the very first root cause when we do our root cause analysis is we missed a step somehow. Why did we miss this step? And what can we do to make it better, right? Yep. We're all human. We all make mistakes. We are going to have to live with mistakes that people have made, and I'm not going to shoot them day one. It may be 5 days later, but that's enough.
No, it's the continuous improvement side of it that's there. It's like anything that's done, guess what? This is done. And it may not even be a human's fault. That AI that you put in, guess what? It made a bad decision.
And
go ahead.
One other thing that I'll go into. I do both red team, blue team. I do all kinds of pen tests. I do not tell my SOC when we're doing a penetration test for a very specific reason. If they don't recognize that we're in the middle of it, that's a training opportunity.
I think we have a question.
Yep, just quickly, and actually still just kind of chewing on Kate's presentation, talking about the importance of communication to the board, needing to have the right language there. Just wondering, in the incident response scenario, when is the time to inform the rest of the senior leadership team, the C-suite, and then what does that communication look like to the board? Is that the CISO typically proactively going and having that conversation, or is that where maybe the CEO owns that conversation with the board and kind of moves forward from there? Just kind of curious to get your thoughts on when that becomes necessary to have those conversations.
You never want to have to do it to the board.
Yeah. The board, usually the C-suite is usually there. The board comes after the fact at that point in time. Normally, if you kind of put it on the timeline scale, and it's really hard to do, typically when you've gone to the incident and you're now starting the response process, you got to tell people. because I'm going to impact business, I'm going to impact things, factories could be shut down, they need to be part of that discussion at that point in time, because they're the people that are making the decisions. You're just orchestrating this and you're doing the response in that. You're not the decision makers on that side of it. So those levels, they are in the notification. Usually kind of, I wouldn't say, there's not a time in that, because it kind of comes up and says, yeah, we have a problem. Okay, how big of the problem do we have? We need to figure that out kind of first before we go to do it. Is it one machine or 30 machines or a whole area?
Yeah, you really have to walk a fine line in notifying the board, because you don't want to have them think it's always the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. General counsel is very, one of the first people to get notified. The president of the company, that's who I report to, so he gets it. We'll get to the CEO later down the line when we actually understand what's going on and have a little bit more of a feeling for how is this going to affect the business? And as soon as I either have to do something or I want to do something that I know is going to affect the business, that's when the CEO comes into it. And then we will have that conversation about saying, when do we go wake up the board? And that's really when it gets really to be an incident that is material. Then the board will get notified, but at that point, it will probably not be me notifying the board. It will be the CEO that's notifying the board, and I'm there giving him talking points and answering any questions.
Yep. Each executive level from the top down adds a clock to your responsibility model that shortens. So if your one is like, I give you a day to figure out what the hell's gone on, now it comes into a half a day, a quarter of a day, 15 minutes, please. So just be aware of that. If you go up too high, it's going to impact what you're actually able to do, because they want answers then and now. And you might not be ready for that, especially if you have limited resources and everything else. It's like, we haven't even figured out a forensic company to come in yet, let alone they're here telling us what's going on. And they may go, yeah, you just give me a date, and it will not work.
Yeah, one of the issues that frequently comes up is, how much do you tell senior leadership and when do you tell leadership? You answered that question in part, but part of the difficulty is training that senior leadership to be receptive. And it's been my experience, and I hope yours is completely different, that CISOs don't always have an effective communication channel with the CEO or with the board of directors. Now, I'm not trying to enrich my position as an attorney, but I would suggest that one way to get the board's attention is to work through your attorney. That means you have to have an attorney that you can rely on and train so that they understand the language. So many times when I've made presentations to a board of directors, they tell me, this is a propeller head problem. This goes to my CISO, I don't really give a rat's fur coat. And my response is, you idiot, your job is to protect the value of the company, to get economic return for the investors. That requires leadership. In order for you to do your job effectively, you need to make sure that the team can function effectively. And that means you need to listen to them. Do you have that kind of a relationship with your CEO,
yeah,
with your board of directors, with your attorney?
Yes.
Yeah, you do be successful on that side of it, because otherwise you're dealing with barriers. And it's happened, and I can tell people, I've been doing this way too long for my life on that side of it. You used to be able to see it when at executive levels they were like, I want evidence of exfiltration before I'm going to throw the big switch and talk to people. Hey, 10 years ago, that was a conversation. Every time you had an incident, you actually had to go through, and you're like, are you kidding me? Do you not think that I break into your house and rummage everything, and the only thing I take is a fork? No, I emptied your house and everything is gone. I made copies of it and it's all there. You are silly if you believe anything otherwise.
We had a question.
Yeah, well, one of the things that you mentioned earlier was every time that you go up a level in an organization, there's baggage that goes along with that. And one of the things that I've found is that when you get to the most senior positions, you have to have a comprehensive message, not just in terms of we had an incident, but what are we doing about it? Who needs to be involved? When do we think we're going to be able to handle it? And then the other aspect is communicating with shareholders, customers, et cetera.
Yeah.
It all comes, part of the mix.
There's
right?
there's a whole PR group that's there, and to your side of the executive thing, I view it as almost like a chessboard at this point in time. You know where the pieces are? The CEO is going to move a piece, or your senior leadership team is going to move a piece. You need to have all the possible permutations that they're going to ask for in that meeting. If you have to walk away from an incident response meeting saying, I will get back to you with that answer, you're in not a good situation at all.
And to address what you were saying about the communications from CISOs, there are still some CISOs that don't have that pipeline. They haven't fostered it. That's part of our jobs as CISOs. Very first thing that I do when I go into another company is I go meet and talk with the executive leadership team. And it depends on whoever's available, whatever they want to talk about. But we start having that conversation. It's communication. That's how we're going to survive the level of incidents that we're seeing now. Is that my first conversation with a member of the board of directors should not be, holy crap, the sky is falling. Yeah. My first conversation should be about lunch, about how are your kids, about how's the weather. Just having these conversations. When I actually had an office and I was in Southern California, I would see members of the board of directors as they'd come in, and we have all these really cool dashboards up. And so I would just stop and talk to them about the dashboards. And then we'd talk about baseball, or we'd talk about something else. So when I actually have to reach out and say, okay, we've had an incident, and this is what I know today, they don't go, who the hell is this person telling me this stuff, and why is he talking to me? I mentor a few younger CISOs, and that's the conversations we have. Our job is to communicate. Our job is not only to run this incident response program and plan, but also translate what all this means to people who are looking at the world from a different set of lenses than we look at it as technologists.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question?
You're on the panel. You have a microphone. I don't know what more you need.
The teacher in me wants to know if where do you start? I don't have a plan. I don't have an incident response plan. Where do I start?
Well, you can hire someone to create an incident response plan for you, which good and bad. You can create your own. You can borrow.
Is there any framework?
There are plenty of frameworks, templates, and everything else
that you recommend
for just about everyone. You can answer too. It's red. You have been deactivated.
CISA just came out with a fairly decent cybersecurity framework for small businesses. That's a great roadmap on how to start this. Now, I may not agree that CEOs are going to understand how to do a red team and a blue team, but that being said, it is a great way, for a small business to at least get a handle on what a roadmap should be. And I had a question.
Yeah, good question. I'll answer. And the CISA guideline would be perfect educational opportunity for students to understand a simple, straightforward flow of what incident response plans versus some of the monstrosities that we know of.
So the panel of riches and friends and TBD, Thank you for the PTSD walk down memory lane of my own guest.
Oh, you're more than
Fabulous.
welcome. Do you really want me to go back to more, or
No,
we can go there?
I do have one question, though. So communication planning, you guys talked about having a PR team, having the internal comms, external comms. I know for me in my career, that sometimes caused me the world's biggest parts of pain when that wasn't done well. Do you tabletop and train on that part as well when you test your plans? So do you test your comms plan as well?
You should test part of that. Both the BCDR functionality is the same way. And in the world of COVID, man, nowadays, if you can't deal without some supply chain issues in an organization, you might as well be back. So turning things off and breaking things should never worry anybody anymore. But the comms stuff is the hard part, because you typically have internal comms. And one of the big things about incidents, and this is for every organization, because the only person that I actually know that actually did this really well, not from any place else, but from an employee internal perspective, was Sony Pictures when they got breached. And you're like, okay, that was a horrible incident from that perspective, but from the internal taking care of the employees, they actually did. Because think about this from two perspectives. You have the internal things and the external communication. It's really easy to send out and say, okay, I'm working with an agency, and part of our PTSD was most of the time the agencies we were working with had not a clue what cybersecurity was, and their first question is that 2 words or 1 word? And you're like, oh dear. And yes, you had to write it, and then they kept changing it. You should not use that gray language. And I'm like, I do not want to use definitive language in this and everything else. So yes, it's a lot of times change. You really now have people that are there. A lot of times they're brought on by outside counsel. They already know that these guys know how to write things. They've already done multitudes of incidents. Their portfolio is like, look at the incidents we've covered on that. But what I think everybody does a really poor job is internal employee incidents. So if I compromised your company and I dumped your databases of everything that's there, I have your internal information. You're a victim of a crime. Every person in the organization is a victim of your crime. Do we do anything about that? Do we provide counseling? Do you do a walkthrough of like, here's your rights, here's your responsibilities, here's what you're capable of doing? We usually don't. We do a really bad job of what we do with our internal employees when we have something that affects the whole company or organization in such a way. And that's, everybody we can write it on the wall, but the companies are like, we're going to get sued, we're going to have this, we're going to have that, we don't want to say too much, we don't want to say too much. They're in your employees, you should take care of them. They're the most valuable resource of your company. Without them, you are not a company, so take care of them and let them be.
Well, the victim family is more than just the employees. It's also the shareholders. So how much of an outreach do you do to make people feel better?
It's not necessarily better. It's like, what are your responsibilities? Can I file a lawsuit when there's an active incident that they stole my information, and where do I do?
Yeah. Now you mentioned my favorite word, lawsuit. And if you want to talk, you do that. You're empowered to do that.
She's like, she's having the popcorn.
Yeah. But in some instances, there's this issue of, well, we followed the protocol. We did everything we were supposed to do. Therefore, our liability exposure is nil. Do you run into that situation?
Not anymore. You no longer have the zero liability. There is always going to be some group, some class action, something that's going to happen after a breach that you're going to be responsible for, or regulatory authority that's going to come back. Everybody, the idea that it can fly under the radar and we can keep it low is not there, but you can't hide from it. You go face it and be honest, and you step up to it, and it's good. But if you try to hide from it or any shape or way, it's not there. And if you're too quick in anything else, and it can destroy companies. We've seen several cybersecurity companies that their sales have gotten squished because of breaches, because of things that are there.
Can you rely on cyber insurance?
Yeah, depending. I don't know. I haven't seen your policy and the key to limiting terms that are there.
Rely on it for what?
Yeah.
There are things you can rely on it for. So I work for a title insurance company. We are in the business to collect fees, not pay claims.
Exactly.
And your cyber insurance carrier is in the business to charge you for your premiums. They are not in the business to pay claims. So if you've looked at the cyber insurance realm for the last couple of years, you'll see more and more things are being excluded out, much more tough regulations or requirements to be able to get at whatever level you think is good, and many more ways of getting out of it, because they did a really bad job of recognizing that when they decided, oh, let's offer cyber insurance, and they're all taking a bath right now.
They have more excuses than your teenager does about doing a chore.
And one of the things I've run into, so this is free legal advice. No, it's just free advice. The lawyer will look at the documents associated with the cyber insurance protection plan and go through it and say, it looks like everything is covered. How often does that lawyer talk to you?
I am involved in every discussion and notification.
Rarely. If you get into large enough stuff, is like you go through the process. There's a whole group that deals with insurance and deals with liability in your organization. They're going to be the front runners of that. You'll get the negotiations at the end of it, and they go, here's what's there, and here's what's changed, and here's your results.
All right. How do you define information warfare? Because cyber insurance companies are using that as an excuse or as a rationale for not paying you.
Excuse.
They will say this is information warfare. Well, was it state sponsored? Probably, because states contract out. How many federal employees are great hackers? None. So we're not that many. So, nation states, Russia, for example, contracts out in the criminal world to hack in to the United States, not just the United States government, but also our businesses. And so the insurance company is going to say,
well, yeah,
go ahead.
That's exactly what we're starting to hear, is they have come to the realization that we all knew. There is a Russian military unit that does cyber. They don't use them against us. They contract that out again to the criminal gangs, and now the cyber carriers are realizing that. And since there is a war going on, they're trying to use that as an excuse. Say, well, this was state sponsored, even though it wasn't. You can't attribute it to the Russian government. You can attribute it to a organization that the Russian government uses.
If the insurance companies have such great attribution, I want their threat intel model. And they suck more than anybody else.
That's true. That's true.
It's true.
What's the easiest way to hack into a private company? Go to .edu. What in the hell are you doing about that?
Whoa. Pass the popcorn.
You got a microphone, use it.
I'm not in charge of security at the institution that I'm at.
In this scenario, you can't play politician with me. It doesn't work.
You know more about EDU than the rest of us have forgotten.
So what is EDU doing? Is that what you're asking?
Well, .edu is so wide open, so professors can communicate with each other. Mm-hmm. And that is an extreme vulnerability that none of them are willing to close out. Mm-hmm. And when you traditionally see something from .edu, this is something that's important that you need to see. You'd be amazed at the number of CEOs and senior staff members say, well, gosh, this came from my college. This came from the local university. It must be trustworthy. And I'll open up on that, and then they hear the crunch of somebody eating their lunch.
That makes sense. I see what you're saying. I haven't come across any incidents like that. I don't know, you guys, you have more experience.
I see it all the time. The number one watering hole attack in my industry is all hosted at .edus.
Yeah.
Why? I have friends that have my counterparts at educational institutions. They have less hair than I do because they are not allowed to do a lot of things because it's an educational institution. The students should be able to do anything they want to.
Yeah.
And they attack me all the time.
No. You also have to look at it from one other aspect on that side of it, and we see this is really, really common, is in the world of social media and precursors to this. Everybody knows what schools you went to. So guess what? I craft a message from your alumni association why you would want to talk to your alumni. You know what's in there. They want money. That's it. They just want you to pay a check and be done with it. Why would you open that email? But people still open the email. They still go back to the other side of it, and it's really easy. And yes, they're sophisticated enough. They'll go back and look and, oh, your name has changed because you got, oh yeah, we'll go back to your other name that you're registered with. Or guess what? They breached the school. Guess what? I can roll out a ton of messages to you looking for something that's actually there. And it is common. And it is one of the spear phishing attacks that they go after because I can send that into your organization and you will listen to it.
You'll open the email.
All right, now how do you deal with the fact that everybody's working from home now, where there's lapsed security or very little security? I mean, when you're doing shareware with your kids who are playing games and TikTok and stuff, and you've got a stud for a teenager, male type generally, who's into porn, as my son was at one time. That's true. It's not just my defense. It's absolutely true. How do you handle that?
So it's one of the things. If you have not figured out that the war is at the endpoint in the last 10 years, you're way behind the curve. It has been there. The endpoint has to be protected. But we market the crap out of this zero trust that, hey, this shouldn't trust anything in the world that's actually there. No crap, it shouldn't. So that's the way it should be on your endpoint. This should be the same exact thing of like, guess what? If you're not fighting at your endpoint, that made COVID not an issue when I sent everybody home because the devices are to be there. You can go to a hotel, it will protect itself. You can go anywhere. It should protect itself regardless of where it actually is because it's a laptop. It's not designed to sit in an office somewhere. It's designed to move.
And we don't have a perimeter anymore. Anyone who thinks they have a perimeter, I've got a bridge I'll sell you in New York.
It's a chalk outline. We are the chalk outline now.
Yeah, and so if you were not planning for something like this, and there were a lot of companies that really had problems because they didn't have the bandwidth to be able to deal with it. They didn't have the tools to be able to monitor it. They didn't have the architecture, and I will not use the zero trust word. They do not have the ability to not trust anything, right? So as soon as you start trusting anything, then that's when you're going to start having problems. And so that's what this has brought to light. The perimeter's gone. It's actually been gone for about 10 years.
Wow. All right. We're running out of time, and I know all of you are just crying in your beer because you want this to last just for another hour, but we do have to stay on schedule. Anybody have any other questions? All right. Concluding comments. No, we should go with you first.
Me?
Well, I'm from the South. We are very deferential.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I learned a lot today that I can pass on to my students.
Welcome.
Great. I want to see your plan, by the way, because it sounds ideal. I'm actually. I am actually I'm gonna have you run for government in Puerto Rico because they don't seem to get their plans together at all.
All right, what's the most important takeaway today from your perspective?
I think the most important takeaway is you have to have a plan, but you have to practice that plan on a regular basis, and the more frequent, the better retention you'll have from that plan that's there. And if you don't have a plan, there's plenty of places to go get one.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Ditto. No, it really is. So
this is not an echo chamber. Come up with something new.
No copying over here.
Okay.
We have a teacher. She'll bark you down.
If you think this is not going to happen to you, it's going to happen to you. period. I tell this all the time to multiple organizations. This is not something that is not going to happen to you, because I hear it more and more often. And here's my analogy. Death never happens to you until it does. And that's where we're at. Have a plan. Practice the plan. Get your executive team and your board of directors familiar with the way you're going to deal with an incident, specifically ransomware. If they don't know how you're going to deal with ransomware, because then the likelihood that you're going to see that is insane. You need to educate. It's communicate.
All right, I want to thank all of you for your attention. And I'm going to add a couple of things that I want all of you to take home and really work hard on. Number one, John Johnson and his team have done a freaking phenomenal job at putting together this conference. The frustrating aspect for me is this thing is not better attended. I was recently the last month I've been speaking at 3 different cybersecurity conferences, and nobody knew about Davenport. Nobody knew about CornCon. They thought it was a Saturday Night Lights skit. I've put pictures on Facebook, because I'm not that good at social media, talking up about this conference. All of you, I'm asking specifically to push this conference for next year, make it double, triple, quadruple the size that it is. This conference is forming a very valuable service to the community. Don't think that cybersecurity is in New York or Washington, D.C. It's all over the country. We need to push that very hard. Number 2, those of you who started the conversation this morning and asked some great questions, and I'm specifically talking to Bob, who's talking. Sorry, what? That's okay. That's okay. And to Kate. I mean, the 2 of you in your presentations this morning really did an excellent job of introducing and setting the stage for this discussion. And the final point I want to make, you 3 are just absolutely amazing. We came together at the last minute. This was a spontaneous come-as-you-are party. We did not rehearse anything. We didn't even know each other's names until we got up here. And what a phenomenal job they did. That's the way you want to have a crisis reaction plan. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day.